All right, top of the agenda is the brutal toll on an injury front that has afflicted the competition at the start of the season. Not the garden variety soft tissue issues, but trauma injuries that make a mockery of those who say the game is going soft. Jeremy Howe has lived this. He gave graphic voice to it here at the desk last night.
I found it really challenging, certainly probably been the most difficult experience for me.
So 4 surgeries in how many days?
11. I just found the isolation part in hospital was really challenging for me. It's the range of movement and the motor control is probably going to be the issue for me, and hopefully it comes back sooner rather than later. Like, I understood that Stengel was coming back with a flight, and I reckon when I went to jump for the ball, I actually turned my body to the side. So I look up, and towards the MCC, there's almost like the row of spotlights that go around the whole side. I stared straight into that, hence why I'd missed the ball. By the time I flipped upside down, I looked for the ground. I reckon that's probably where I've relaxed, and I don't find the ground. And then when I obviously try and push for it again, yeah, my arm's the first thing to go. Like, I heard the snap pretty blatantly. But yeah, my shoulder was in a bit of pain to start with, but then obviously, yeah, looking down, I kind of realised what I'd done.
The game is brutal, the players are brave, and the toll is savage at times. Is that such a graphic injury, which we know? Then you roll in the ruptured spleen that Mason Cox is talking about, the broken ribs and the sternum damage that Josh Bruce has suffered, long-term injuries like trauma injuries in the comp at the moment.
We should be unapologetic when it comes to this, and I know that sounds brutal, and it's not an uncaring statement for those that have suffered. We have made the head a priority, as we should, and I'm all for it, and I really drive that really hard, but the gladiatorial nature of this game is what has drawn people to it over 100+ years, and it remains to be there. And it is a calculated risk that the current day player takes. Well, but current day, yes, and players of past eras, you talk about their capacity. You walk around the halls of this place and you'll see blokes that their knees don't work, their hips have been replaced. And to a man, I would suggest that none of them want their time again, because that is what we take. Yep. We take that on knowingly, and we wear it almost as a badge of courage that, yes, you know, these injuries that you're talking about are a possibility, but that's the nature of the game. And we accept the risk that comes with it. And I know it reads horribly, and there's been a little spate of them in recent times, but if you go back over time, there's no difference.
So this is where what annoys me is when you thoughtlessly get the fans who still want the capacity to be able to jam a bloke's head into the ground, and if you take that away, is the game's gone soft? Or no, it hasn't. That nature, the physical, the brutal nature of the game is absolutely inherent still, and it loses nothing on recognising a period of enlightenment around head trauma. Yes. But it doesn't diminish the risks within the game and the sheer bravery that I acknowledge all of you who have played it take.
And let's be clear, that's just from the last week. That's not over the course of the year. But again, when you say it loses nothing, for those who are bemoaning the fact that the odd sling tackle is resulting in a week, you're still going to get your carnage.
Yes.
If that's what drives you to the footy. And I'm not saying that as a smart aleck, because I know that there is people who walk away from their jobs to go there and witness an overtly physical contest, and we celebrate that. We say that this game is as physical and hard to play as any in the world. Well, there's the byproduct, and the injury toll right now has to be dealt with by the West Coast Eagles here, who sit at the top of that toll. St Kilda, admirably, who are able to manage it and still, compete to the level they have. And then you go down the other end and we'll see some games missed by players, which is extraordinary.
Clubs are hostage to their injury list. As just as we were walking in tonight, Dan McStay's came back. It's 10 weeks for his finger tendon. He can't touch a ball for 6 weeks. And the best illustration to flesh that out, Sir Swamp Thing's one of my favourites on Twitter. So he did on the published injury lists yesterday, this is the number of games experience your club is missing, and it stretches from 1,384 at West Coast who are afflicted, and Adelaide are missing 0.
That is extraordinary.
Yes.
Now, Darren Burgess has long been held up as a pillar of what's all good about strength and conditioning, but even he wouldn't suggest that they could be sitting there without a player, one game missing. What a performance from the Swans to be still up there. Youngest team on the weekend, and a lot was made of Richmond and how decimated they were, and they were. The Swans were the youngest team out there on the weekend, still managed to get it done.
Yep, so you can marry that up with how your team is performing right now and overcoming adversity. So that's the toll in the competition right now. The tension piece in the player safety issue resides around the suspensions that are coming through the dangerous tackle. I would make the case that we are getting not only clarity but consistency, and that is so rare from this judicial system. But there are those who say we are in the grip of confusion.
This is changing nearly week by week. So we started out the season, or even a bit of last year, it was 2 motions. So clearly the second motion would then warrant either a trip to the tribunal or an instant suspension. That didn't have that. This is the hardest position to be in from a player tackling another player, is this transitional period. And I think a lot of the coaches are right. You're better off to not take the players to ground.
It was a difficult one because we don't want players to stand up in tackles and be able to get the ball out. So sometimes it takes double action, but we've got to be really careful.
Maybe the rule interpretation has on what's considered prior opportunity and fending and standing up in the tackle may need to change, because ultimately players are only taking them to the ground to try and retard them with the ball, right? So maybe that needs to be looked at.
All the players would love clarification. I think we play a game that's so random and chaotic at times, and when you're not exactly sure on what's allowed and what's not allowed, there's been a lot of cases in the last few weeks of players getting done for similar incidents, so it'd be great to get a little bit of clarification.
You look back on footage of the game from 5 years ago and there are things that happen that are far less common now than back then. So I think maybe we're caught in one of those periods where, you know, a sling tackle is slowly being phased out of the game. So there's certainly no one answer to it, but I think we're just trying to find the best way to strike the balance between being a physical game that's tough to play, but also, giving due attention to the problem of players getting concussions and the ramifications of that.
So we're running at more than 1 suspension a week at the moment, and obviously last night's 2 tribunal cases around Taylor Adams and Zach Merritt plays a role in progressing things. In a period of evolution, what you need is absolute consistency. And the MRO is doing that case to case to case, and the tribunal is ratifying those case to case to case. So we have a suite of case studies through 5 rounds that give you a pretty good indication of what is no longer tolerated. That Nathan Broad is the starting point, and then you can work your way through. It's not just 2 actions, it's the driving, the slinging, the dumping to the ground, and it all resides around the head making contact with the turf.
Right, so I think this show, and without wanting to embarrass you, have great responsibility in providing some of this clarity that the players still maintain that they don't have. And I, as someone that don't follow this as closely as you, also need that degree of clarity so I can then, as a commentator, pass it on. So the 2 actions and then the head hitting the ground are the consistent...
No, it doesn't have to be 2 actions. There are 4 triggers along the way. One is 2 actions. Yes. The other is the driving, slinging motion into the turf. Excessive force, player in a vulnerable position. Yep. So that idea that it is only for the bump, that's not right. That's sort of one of 4 triggers along the way. And then the head, you tell me, is the absolute tick-off. So it's contact to the head, not contact to the body. So then... I hear today Clayton Oliver. Well, Clayton Oliver, who obviously... I looked at that and thought, yeah, he's damn lucky. But let's have a look at it. And you tell us, and for those out there that are running the campaign to say this is where the confusion lies, why hasn't that been signed? So that's a dangerous tackle free kick rather than a dangerous tackle suspension, because Parker doesn't land on his head. So good luck. Parker lands on his head, Oliver serves multiple weeks. Right, so there's no potential to cause injury element in there. If his head hit the ground, the potential to cause injury is going to cost Oliver a lot in that motion. So that's really important. It is a free kick. You hear the umpire blows, dangerous tackle. But just like every other adjudication, not every dangerous tackle is a suspension. Yes. The ones where the head hits the turf, that's where you're going to get now. So I think that's really important to get that clarity, because around the country I've heard different variations on this, and for me to hear that tonight is a good thing. So we need to continue to discuss it. I think Darcy Moore hits the nail on the head.